And welcome to the next session in today's programme. I'm joined by James Chutter, Corporate Account Manager, and Emma Evenett, Business Development Manager at Leeds Building Society. And they'll be taking on an assessment of the pressures you as administrators face, the key role you play in the execution of case management, and also the many ways that you can positively affect the application process. Hopefully, as you've heard already from Vicky Hartley's opening address, the presentation, which will be about 15 minutes long, will be followed by time for questions and answers. So please do fire your questions in through the web chat box as they occur to you, and I'll put them to our speakers after the session. It's perhaps worth noting that you don't have to wait until the end of the presentation to submit your questions, as they will be put into a queue for me to ask after their 15 minutes. But without further ado, let's first hear from James and Emma.
Hi, my name's James Chutter, and I'm the Corporate Account Manager from Leeds Building Society. I'm joined today by Evenett, who's one of our BDMs for the South Coast, and today we'll be presenting on ways to rethink your daily routine and a guide to packaging. The aim of our session today is to provide you with some useful information and techniques that you can use in your role as a mortgage administrator, and in some cases your day-to-day life too. We'll firstly look at what we've called the Administrator Hub, which focuses on the pressures of the role on an administrator and how you have to bring everything together. We'll then discuss what you can control in the process, such as your daily routine, and then we'll also look at what tools are there at your disposal. Emma will then take over and take a look at some good techniques for spotting errors and fraud before closing off with a summary. So the administrator role plays a key role in the mortgage process, as it's their job to bring everything together, which is why we've put them in the centre of the Administrator Hub, which you can see on your screen at the moment. An administrator role can vary greatly depending on what type of firm you work for. So, for example, you could look after one broker and ensure that they've got nothing else to do in the process once it's been submitted, or you could be dealing with 5 brokers and directing tasks where appropriate. Either way, you're very much the glue that sticks everything together. Let's have a look at the stakeholders now that they have to deal with and the many problems that can occur. So first off, we've got the lenders and their many different systems, processes, packaging requirements and preferences of how best to contact them. Having a good knowledge of how the lender works is a really good way to ensure that the customer gets an offer quickly. And having good contacts such as your BDM is really important to ensuring that you know every little trick about the lender, which will help your case go faster, which I'll elaborate on the next slide. Next, then, we've got your broker, and in some cases, brokers. So having a good working relationship and effective communication with them is key to providing a good service to your customers. And in some firms, the broker's got very little involvement once the case has been submitted. So a lot of the responsibility is passed to the administrator to get the case over the line. The experience of buying a house and getting a mortgage is very varied due to the many different moving parts of the process. And that can lead to the administrator having to get further involved with third parties such as the solicitors, developers, estate agents, and even the surveyors. Like, for example, if a property's been downvalued, then the administrator may need to engage with all of those parties to support the broker to find a solution. This can be immensely stressful, so being able to handle these situations with a cool head is definitely required. Most importantly of all, the administrator has to ensure that the customer is informed at all times so that they feel that they're being looked after and that they're in good hands. So the customer's main focus will be on getting a mortgage as quickly and easily as possible. So with all these varying factors on the administrator, we're now going to take a look at what you can control in the process to make it as smooth as possible for you and for the stakeholders. So the first thing that you can control is your daily routine. So this may have changed dramatically since COVID with working from home and the challenges that brings, but having a good routine that structures your day can really help reduce stress levels, improve productivity, and support your physical and mental health. There's hundreds of different daily routine plans online, but what we've chosen to look at is coaching guru Tony Robinson's top tips, which include things like fuel up. So looking after your nutrition throughout the day and starting with a healthy breakfast to ensure you've got good energy levels to deal with all tasks ahead, and also remember to stay hydrated. Exercise, so the endorphins that are released during exercise will give you more energy for the day and increase your mental sharpness, but you'll also get the added benefits such as better health, increased confidence and mental clarity, no matter when or what sort of exercise that you're doing. Also to learn. So most of us in the corporate world will have some form of personal development plan. So this is your chance to learn something new. So please make the most of it. Grab whatever opportunities are available to you, whether it be an online course, listening to a podcast, reading a book. It doesn't even have to be work related, just as long as it's developing you in an area that you're interested in, and you'll be really surprised how much can be then transferable in your day-to-day job. Downtime, so make sure you get a break in the day away from your screen to relax and to reset. Meditation is a fantastic way to do this and to also help sort of plan the rest of your day. And then finally, make a to-do list. So this will help you prioritize what's important to you and to help you organize your whole day. It can be really helpful to do this at the end of the day so that you can relax then after work, knowing that the next day is completely planned out and you know what's the first priority. Now I'm going to take you on to the 4Ds. So this has been rebranded a number of different times, but I only know it as the 4Ds, which is do, diarise, delegate, and delete. So it's quite a straightforward way of being able to prioritize tasks, but I find it works really well when you get a new email and how to manage your email inbox. So if you get a new email in, you just refer to the 4Ds. So if it's something that you can do and it's something simple and it's not a massive priority, then you can just do it now and then it's done. However, if it's something more challenging or you don't have time, then you can add it to your diary. It's diarised for something when you do have more time. And then again, you don't have to worry about it straight away. If the task isn't your responsibility, then you can delegate it to someone else and do. And then finally, if it's something that's already been done or you're not required to do anything, then you're easily able then to delete it or in some cases dump it. Either way, it's done and you haven't got to worry about it anymore and you can get on with whatever is the most priority at that particular time. So I'll move on now to packaging, which is probably the part of the mortgage process that administrators have the most control over, whether it's at the start of an application or support them with further requests from lenders. So rather than just repeat our own packaging requirements, we spoke to one of our senior underwriters to find out what they look for in a well-packaged case. Their first tip was to have an eye for detail. So if 1 month's bank statement has been requested, then ensure that the whole month is included and it's all in the same format. We know customers don't always provide what's been asked for, but by providing the full document, it will save time later on down the line. Also, then sending everything together to avoid drip feeding documents is something that our underwriters always prefer. So if an underwriter has all the documents, they can underwrite the case all in one go. If there's documents missing, then it could cause issues later on down the line. For example, if a final page of a bank statement shows that they've got perhaps a non-disclosed commitment or a strange entry, that could then create more questions and then more delays later on down the line. Next is to know your lender. So each lender has a different set of requirements and processes to follow up, which makes the admin and broker's role completely invaluable to a customer to help them navigate all of that. So knowing how a lender works from start to finish will always help in the long run. So getting time with the lender's BDM and to get detailed knowledge of their system and quirks is a really valuable exercise, and it will also help build a relationship with them as well. Also, to tell the story. So one of the hardest things that our underwriters told us is that trying to understand the whole story of the case. So for example, if a customer's capital raising to buy a camper van, rather than just writing it's for a camper van, try and paint the whole picture. If a customer, so you could say things like a customer is keen surfer and wants the camper van for a weekend trip to the south coast. That will help put the underwriter's mind at rest that they're not planning to go off on a round the world trip once the mortgage finally completes. Finally, knowing the lender's systems and technology available to you. So for example, can you get instant updates from the lender's portal rather than having to call up? Can you upload the docs rather than faxing or emailing, which can cause issues seeing the documents at the other end? Knowing these little tricks can take days off of getting an application to offer. And so I hope you found this part of the session useful. I'm now going to hand you over to Emma, who's now going to look at some of the best practices on checking for fraud. Over to you, Emma.
Thank you, James. So leading on from James's tips on packaging, we thought it'd be useful to touch on fraud and some things to look out for that can suggest the document you've received has been tampered with or is fraudulent. Advances in technology mean that it's easier than ever to falsify documents, and it can be really hard to spot the difference between a fake or a real payslip or bank statement. In terms of income, staged and inflated income is currently one of the most common methods of fraud. So let's start with payslips. So have a look at the employee number on the payslip. You would expect this to be large for a customer working within a larger firm. So for example, if the customer works for Tesco, that the employee number is only a 1 or a 2, this could be a sign that something's not right. Also check the salary numbers. Very round numbers are unusual, so be aware of any pay slips with exact matching numbers that are precisely the same every single week in every single month. Plus look at year-to-date figures. So for example, if the customer started their job several years ago and you've got the March pay slip, which is the last one for the tax year, you would expect the year-to-date figure to show a full year's worth of income. Or if the customer has just started a brand new job, or you've got an April payslip, which is the first payslip for the tax year, you would expect that just to reflect 1 month's worth of income in the year-to-date figure. When looking at bank statements, what's the quality like in general? So do the statements appear patchy at all, or are there any unusual marks or unusual outlines on the document? This could indicate that the document has been altered. Also consider the font size, the type of the font, the colouring, and the logo of the bank on the bank statement. So does that look like statements that you've seen before, or can you spot any differences there at all? Have a look at the transactions themselves too. So check that they match the balances on the bank statement. So for example, if salary has been credited, is this reflected by showing that the balance has increased? And salary credited by faster payment instead of backs could also be a sign of fraud. This next slide shows an example of a bank statement that has been altered. This was provided to us by our financial crime prevention team. You can see that the font that's been used on the bank statement is completely different to the rest of the document. So in this case, we referred the document over to the bank, who confirmed that the account itself was genuine and in the customer's name. However, the salary credits were not genuine transactions. If you have any concerns over documents that you receive, it's best that you refer these to your compliance team, who can offer you further support. Now I'm going to have a talk to you about the lots of ways that Leeds Building Society have improved recently, the aim being to save you lots of time and to make sure that you can offer better service to your customers. So firstly, we've made a huge investment in our brand new system where DIPs and applications are submitted. For any of you that input DIPs and applications, you'll notice that there's much more automation. So there's a lot less questions, around less than half than were on the previous system. Again, this reduces the time that you will need to spend inputting all of that information for the customer. We are now live with Lender Connect too. So this means that certain sections from sourcing systems such as Trigold are linked to your systems and pre-populate within our DIP too, so that you can move seamlessly from your system to our DIP with a lot of the data already input. You just need to double check and tweak a few areas. The DIP decision is instant, and accepted decision in principles will give a certificate produced straight away for you. So you can pass it over to the customer and save a copy for your records if you need to, along with a summary of the information that's been entered. The decision in principle also gives a list of all of the documents that we will need for a first assessment, so that you can speak to the customer upfront and let them know exactly what we're going to need to make that first assessment. This gives them some ease and hopefully saves you time again. One of the key features for all administrators is that now you can have your own registration details too. So you can have your own login details and passwords and access cases in your own right. This means you can upload documents yourself and use our case tracking system to see updates from ourselves in real time. You can also view documents linked to the application, so a summary of the full application data that was entered, also a copy of the valuation as soon as that's done and uploaded by us, and also a copy of the mortgage offer. Again, as soon as that's offered by the underwriter, you can go in and have a look, print it off for your records or keep it for your records. This does all allow you to provide much quicker and more accurate updates to your customers, as this is all done in real time. So you don't necessarily need to phone us when you're busy and you've got lots on your plate. If you haven't already done so, it's worth getting registered on that new system with us, and also encouraging line managers and supervisors within your firm to do the same, as they can have their own access too. This means that you can all work together to progress cases, and this can be especially useful sometimes when brokers are on holiday or if they leave the firm. If you need any further help, you do want to speak to somebody, our service desk colleagues are based up in Leeds and they're always happy to help. And also your local BDM can offer support and tips on the system as well, and give you information on where to find documentation. Please head over to our intermediary website when you can. It's really worth having a good look on here to see things such as current processing times, also application to offer times, so you can be honest with customers up front about how long things should take and saving you time as well. And also you can see videos which explain how to use our new system and guides on how to use tracking, again, just with an aim to save you lots of time. We're also on Twitter and LinkedIn too, so for those of you who are on Twitter and LinkedIn, please follow us, and hopefully you'll find that useful for lots of further updates. I hope that you have found this presentation useful so far. I'm just going to summarise for you and recap what we've been through today. So James talked to you about your key roles and the many different stakeholders that you look after within your firms. James also talked you through how to make the most of your day, including daily routines, the importance of looking after your well-being, the 4 Ds for email management, and also top tips from one of our senior underwriters. I also gave you tips on what to look out for fraud when thinking about bank statements and payslips, and showed an example of a bank statement for you that had been tampered with. And also some of the ways that Leeds Building Society have improved recently with a view to saving you valuable time. Thank you so much for listening. I really hope you enjoy the rest of your sessions today. And James and I are now free to take questions if you have any.
Thank you both for some, a fascinating insight and some fantastic tips there, which hopefully our audience can take away with them. As Emma just mentioned on the presentation, both herself and James are here to answer your questions. For those that are yet to submit, just a quick reminder that there is a question box. Hopefully you can see it below your presentation screen. So just type your question in there and hopefully we'll have time to get round to it. But I'm looking into the inbox and there's already a few questions there, of which, I think the first 1 or 2 sort of reference that relationship with the lenders and getting to know your lenders more. So let's dive straight into those questions. And the first is, I guess you speak about how administrators should get to know each lender, and in particular BDMs. I'm going to make a bit of a sweeping statement here to suggest that perhaps historically a lender's BDM's first port of call would have been with the advisor rather than the administrator. But probably that has changed now, knowing that the administrator's role is as important as ever. So the first question relates to that. How can administrators ensure they get time with BDMs to get the answers they need?
Emma, do you want to take that one, or do you want me to?
Emma, you're just on mute.
I'm sorry, I was just classic on mute there, everyone. You're right, Ian, important administrator relationships are really important. I've got some great relationships with administrators down on the South Coast in my patch. And for me, really, an administrator sending an email or phoning me about a case or the system or anything it is that they need to know is no different to an advisor, really. I would always aim to respond to that as quickly as possible. Certainly, I think if administrators are aware that BDMs are due to do any face-to-face visits or any Zooms or Teams meetings, ask your advisors or the BDM if they can jump onto those and attend, or come to those meetings face-to-face. And certainly, I think the role is really important, and administrator inquiries are a huge part of my working. So certainly agree that role is really, really important.
Fantastic. And I guess there's an extension of that with a secondary question that's sort of come in. And again, relating to that sort of process of getting to know lenders, it's how best do you manage this, given that there are more and more lenders than ever before? I guess that's quite a task to get to know every lender.
Yeah, you can imagine that is, it's difficult enough to learn, one lender can do for us. So, it's hugely difficult to manage a large number of lenders across the market. I think, as I say, that I would just say to speak to your advisors if they've got relationships with BDMs already, potentially. I'm not sure if you've got anything else that you can add to that, James.
Yeah, I think to speak to your broker and see who their preferred lenders are. I mean, depending what sort of type of business that they're doing, they might have a sort of a top 10, a top 20, and then that would be a good place to start. Of like, right, okay, so if you're using these lenders, they might be they might be a buy-to-let specialist, and therefore they're only going to use some of the sort of more bespoke buy-to-let lenders, and therefore, right, if that's the case, then we need to get in contact with the BDM for them to come in and do a bit of training around their system. I mean, for most administrators who are experienced enough, will already know who their brokers' sort of favourites are, and will then naturally then have that extra bit of communication with those BDMs and those lenders. But especially if you're newer to the role, then you have to try and highlight who those favourites are. And then to make contact with them so that you can make sure you're in the most, I suppose, the best possible position for when those applications start coming in and when either issues start arising, or just to know the process as smoothly as possible to be able to support your customers with.
Thank you. And I guess, this sort of acceleration of digital platforms hopefully is helping that process. Zoom, Teams, web chat, sort of, it isn't necessarily a face-to-face meeting you have to wait for, and there's plenty of avenues to sort of reach out and sort of speak to lender BDMs, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's sort of move on to, I guess, James, maybe this next question sort of is more focused towards you, as you were talking around case packaging tips. Are there any common themes you see in terms of sort of potential issues with inbound cases? I mean, I guess I'm picking out some examples. I mean, are you seeing sort of incomplete bank statements, or the documents get sent through piecemeal rather than in one go as is preferred?
They're definitely examples that we've seen before, and I think that's a really tricky job for administrators, because they're kind of at the coal end, because it depends on what the customer gives them and how organised the customer can be. And I suppose that's where a good first up process for when the customer's coming to their first mortgage meeting and preparing them of what might be required, and I suppose the more due diligent you can be around that pre-list will help from the first up meeting. But then, I suppose it would always help the underwriter. And from when we spoke to our senior underwriter in preparation for this session, it was very much they want everything that's on the list, as it gives them the best possible opportunity to be able to underwrite the case in one go. And that if documents are drip fed later on down the line, and there are some other lenders that do prefer that, depending on what their systems are. But if you've got an underwriter wanting to take ownership of a case, you're more likely to get a faster decision, whether it be decline or accept. But you're able to get that end decision quicker, because the underwriter is going to be asking you for less information later on down the line, which also means that there's less chance for mistakes and further information being asked for, which always delays things.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and just to sort of build on that, another questions come in, which is one common thing we are finding are that people can only send photographs of documents across as people are working from home. How can we help further avoid fraud with these types of documents?
So can you just repeat that again?
One common thing that we're finding is that people can only send photographs of documents across as, I guess, people are working from home. How can we help further avoid fraud with these types of documents?
From my perspective, I would always be asking to see the physical copy. I know that's a more trickier way of doing things, especially through COVID times. There's also the option of using things like Zoom or FaceTime, so that you could actually see a live video of the customer with that document, as well as seeing a photo of it. There's a number of electronic ID options as well. We've recently, as Emma just mentioned, we've just installed our new system, Mortgage Hub, which has the ability to be able to do background searches to see if we can electronically verify the customer's information. And we have quite a high percentage of our cases where we're actually able to verify a customer's identification, as long as, especially if they're on the voters roll and their bank statements and things like that all match up. So using a lender's technology that's available to you, we'll be able to be able to, from a lender's perspective, not need that identification to be uploaded to the case. However, I know that from just a general compliance perspective, you need to make sure that you know that customer. So it would be just a matter of if the customer is sending you that photo, just to be strong with them and say that I'm actually going to need a copy of it, and we're going to need to set up a meeting. And if the customer's then a long way away, then worst case scenario, I suppose, would be even having to post the documents. But whatever it is that you need to do to make sure that know your customer is satisfied.
Perfect, thank you. And just sort of honing in on some of the case packaging tips that you mentioned. Somebody sort of come in with a question relating to your point about telling the story. Their question is it worth adding the details of the case to the notes section of the application form, or a document added to uploads on the case? Which is better from your perspective?
Either. I think, again, depending on what systems the lender has. In my previous role as a BDM, there was brokers that I knew would submit a separate document, which effectively had the War and Peace about the case, which literally told it started with, "Dear Mr. Underwriter, dear Mrs. Underwriter, these are my clients, and this is why they're looking to borrow this money, and this is what the whole purpose of it is for." Even if it was just a straightforward remortgage, they would even put a note in to say it was a straightforward remortgage. And funnily enough, that broker hardly ever got asked for any further information or any kind of more background information, because the underwriter was of a clear story, because they can only see what you put, what is keyed in. So again, whatever works for that lender system, whether it be a note on the system, or whether it be adding a document, either would work fine. It's more just to make sure that content is in there, just to give them that brief overview, because it's those soft facts that will make the underwrite so much more easier for the underwriters and give them a better chance of getting a positive outcome.
Switching attention now to, I guess, things previous or earlier in the presentation, a question coming in around your points around well-being and making sure that people are looking after themselves in order to perform to their maximum. So the question is, somebody who's posted it has recently heard that concentrating on absorbing tasks can be as good as meditating for switching off from work or stress. And this particular person has found puzzles and learning a language online have helped. What do you do to de-stress and switch off from work?
Do you want to take that one, Emma, and then I'll come up with mine?
Yeah, I try to get outside as much as I can. That for me works. So whether it's going to the park with the kids, although it's with the kids, it's still outside, so there's still an element of stress. And also going for a run as well, if possible. Go for a walk. I think we've all got a lot more into walks since COVID over the last year or two. So a walk with a friend in the evening, especially when the weather is being good and it's not raining. For me, that works wonders to clear my head at the end of the day and kind of get me ready for the next day.
Yeah, and from my point of view, mine's always been exercise, whether it be running, gym, but swimming was something that I was trying to get much better at before lockdown. So with the swimming pools being shut, I had to move to whatever pond, lake, river, sea I could get to, and that's something that I've definitely taken a lot from is outdoor swimming.
Fantastic.
It's pretty cold sometimes.
Yeah, there we go. There's some good tips there. I'm very conscious of time, so I think we've got time for one more question, and it sort of focuses more on the fraud prevention. I mean, clearly, we keep reading generally that the environment we're living and working in is conducive for, I guess, criminals to sort of take advantage of people in slightly more vulnerable positions. I mean, what's the sort of general picture in the mortgage market, in the sense, are we seeing many more cases, fraud cases sort of rearing their ugly head? And I guess particularly what do administrators need to look out for? I know, Emma, you sort of highlighted stage or inflated income. Is that the big thing at the moment, or there are other sort of things that administrators in particular can kind of keep their eye out for?
Do you want me to help with that one, Emma?
Yes, please, James. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm not quite in a position to say whether fraud levels are rising. I wouldn't say I've got a wide enough view on that at the moment. However, customer vulnerability is very much a key thing, which has sort of been linked in quite closely with fraud at the moment, and people being at risk, especially since the pandemic. From the research that we did for this presentation, of speaking to our own fraud teams and looking at sort of what the common market trends are for fraud, I think like we've mentioned in the presentation would be staged income. So where someone might be telling you that they've got a job and have the pay slips to show it, but it's not actually genuine. So it's a made up job and therefore made up income, and it might have only just started probably 6 to 3 months before the mortgage application has come in. So it's just making sure, and like what Emma stated, with like making sure that the pay slip's valid, making sure that the case numbers aren't rounded and that the values aren't rounded are always really good tips to look at for pay slips. Also inflated income, so where the customer is saying to you that they might be earning 20,000 when actually their job is 15,000. They may have edited again their pay slips again. So it's just making sure that the pay slip looks completely spot on. And you can call up the employer if that's the case, or HMRC, to be able to verify their income. That's the sort of thing that are available to lenders as well. And then the other third sort of big trend that we've seen is affordability manipulation. So where a customer has got or tried to conceal debts that could affect their affordability, and it could not so much be debts or just any commitment which could be affecting their affordability, and that can be something as simple as moving a direct debit to another bank account that then that's not been given to the broker, so it's been done to conceal be able to conceal that debt or commitment, which then would have a positive effect on their affordability. So those are sort of three main things to look out for: staged income, inflated income, and affordability manipulation.
Perfect, thank you, James. Because I know, in many cases, the administrator or paraplanner can be the gatekeeper to all of this. So, super important to keep an eye out for. In the interest of time, I do need to bring it to a close there. Just to say to those people who kindly submitted a question and we didn't have time to sort of get around to answering it, please be assured that those questions will be passed through to both James and Emma, who will answer them directly with you. I hope everyone has enjoyed this session. Thank you to all of those who did participate in the Q&A, and of course, particular thank you goes to James and Emma. Our next session is at 11 o'clock, so please make sure you tune in for that one. That is Danielle Walters from Aldermore, and she'll be taking you through the evolving self-employed landscape, and in particular giving tips on supporting good packaging cases in the self-employed arena. But for now, thank you very much to both James and Emma, and goodbye.